Hello, YouTubers, fellow tankers, and even my own clanmates. This is King's Court Reviews, and I am Shrine King, and today we are going to go over just another tank in World of Tanks, which is the Tier 6 Heavy KV-2. Now, a lot of people are already really aware of the KV-2, but for those that are not, the KV-2 is a heavy tank that's basically the KV-1 mounted with a artillery cannon, essentially, and a big frickin' turret. And as you can see here, I'm kind of just showing the tank and its specs, and you'll notice right away, like I said, that turret is humongous. And, of course, the gun is humongous too, so it all fits, maybe. I don't know how it fits, but yes, it's there. So, you will, of course, start out with a different gun. And the gun I'm showing is actually like an end gun that you can use. There are other options. You can use one that is more consistently going to put out rounds for the DPM sense, but honestly, the artillery gun is pretty hilarious. And you'll see there, apparently didn't upgrade the radio, which is kind of funny. I now noticed that, but that's why I swapped it, because apparently I had it unlocked and I just never put it in there. So, as always, for those who are new, I cover pros and cons, and then considerations of the tier below, tier above. So, most of the tier for the heavy side will not be anything similar or even related to what the KV-2 is. The KV-2 is an interesting way that they set up to allow you to make your way into the artillery line, which is what I'm showing there. So you can take the KV-2 into the artillery line, and that will give you a way of bypassing trying to play artillery from like tier 2 on. So by then I think you're already at like tier 7 for the artillery. And that artillery is not really that bad, technically. Where does this thing kind of compare? So the other side of this is the OI in consideration. So the OI is newer than the KV-2, but the KV-2 still holds the renowned aspects that most people are already aware of the KV-2, and it's derpa gun, as I put it. So the 152 millimeter gun on it, where it's just launching like basically brick houses at you, is really the key component of this. And the OI basically gets to the point where it does the same thing. So, pros. As a heavy, it's not too slow. It's not too fast. And considering at the tier, it actually holds up its speed pretty good. The hull armor is actually pretty decent. It's just, it doesn't hold up anymore as more tanks have been released with higher penetration ratings. So that's one thing to bear in mind as you're playing this. Is the model is pretty old, and it was based off of a lot of old stuff. The gun, when you get to this gun, becomes this like instant nuker gun. And it's good at its tier, even a tier above. But as you can see, like the aiming on it is very, very ridiculous. But if you nail someone, they pretty much just disappear. Now that said, though, if they're higher tiers and stuff like that, and heavies, what'll happen is you won't penetrate them, but you'll just do decent damage on a hit, which is like 200 to 300. What's interesting there is you don't really have to aim as much, like trying to figure out like pinpoint sniper spots and stuff like that. Because yeah, well, if you nail the sniper spot, that's great. But honestly, because as you saw that reticle, it takes forever. So, not necessarily what you're probably going to end up doing with the tank if you're running the big derpa gun. Other than that, like view range is pretty standard for a heavy. Actually, overall, like a lot of the stuff is pretty standard. The big component to it is the big whopper gun. That's really the biggest pro to this tank. Which is kind of funny because honestly, that really is it. The model, the armor, and stuff like that holds up really well at tier 5. It just doesn't hold up as well at tier 6. But then with all the changes now with new tanks and higher penetration ratings and stuff like that, it's even less comparable at tier 6 now. So what are the cons? Well, the biggest con I would point out is actually its turret traverse. So that's one thing to bear in mind. Is any target that you're really going to have to try to aim at or look at, you really need to start turning the turret pretty early. The other bit is the aiming time. So the aiming time will take quite a long time because, like I said, it's basically using an artillery cannon to fire, and it's pretty ridiculous. Other than that, I mean, the typical stuff that you see on heavies, like, you know, low camo rating. That's pretty much the gist of it. So that said, line. Well, like I said, it's a nice way to get into artillery. This tank itself is kind of fun to play because of the whole derping aspect. It can also be pretty frustrating because of the fact of the accuracy. So when you miss, you're on a long wait. You're talking about like a 20-second reload just to get your shell back. Now, that said, the being able, like, some people really don't like artillery, and where you do tend to enjoy artillery is usually at the higher tiers when you actually have like the suppression. At lower tiers you don't have suppression. So I definitely would say it's still worth going down this line rather than actually going through the artillery line. That said, if you really enjoy artillery, you might actually like just running through the artillery line, even though you won't have all that. But I don't recommend it. I did not enjoy any aspect of artillery at lower tiers. Higher tiers seems to be where I tend to start enjoying artillery. Now, that all said, like I said, I also covered the tier before. Before you play the KV-1, which is an amazing tank at the tier, it will actually kind of pamper you a bit. So when you get into this, bear in mind you can't run around like you're KV-1. You really need to kind of stick to running it like as if it's kind of like it, but more like a pop out, not like nuke someone, and then kind of roll back kind of scenario. Because like I said, you got 20 seconds on your reload. So, guide aspects. Where do you want to be? How should you be playing? Instead of playing this thing as a frontline heavy, you want to play as more like a supportive heavy. You want to have other heavies hopefully with you, or other teammates there with you. And you want to be the guy that's kind of sitting back or hiding, waiting to get that reload. And then you want to be the guy that pops out where everybody else that is on your enemy team that sees you is like, oh my bejesus, this is about to go horrible. That's what you want to do. And then once you hit them, you want to go hide. So they're like, oh no, they got that KV-2 over there. We got to hide. We got to pull back. We can't take it. It's a KV-2. Now, that said, you always run into the guy who's always the smart one. And then he comes rushing you. Because he's like, I don't care. It's a KV-2. It's got to die. It's going to reload 20 seconds. I got time. And hopefully the rest of his team doesn't come to do the same. Because you can most likely handle one guy. If more come, then you have a problem. So try to play it kind of midfield, or not midfielder, I'm sorry, mid-line of the heavy line. So let other heavies or other people take the front line and then just come out and pump a shot into someone and then kind of pull back and hide. Wait for that reload to come in. So rocks and stuff like that are like typically your friend. The scenario where, like, you know, hey, if I had like, you know, a heavy player there with me, I'd let them take the line. Or even the T54 Mod 1, right? If the T54 Mod 1 was there with me, I'd let him kind of take the front, right? Which you'll see, like, I'm actually working on this one where I'm capturing, and he went rushing out there on his own. Where if he would have came to the flag, we could have worked together. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, that's kind of also knowing your team, right? So the T54 Mod 1 actually is a medium at top tier that can count pretty much as a heavy because it's got really good armor. Had he been there with me, then we could have done that combination. So like he would have engaged, got the attention, I would have nuked somebody, and then we would have probably just won really easily. But here we're trying to do the flag capture because we saw signs that we should be able to do it pretty early on, and then, you know, people just, you know, do what people do. So here's a case where you saw, like, right there, put a shot into the guy. It did hit, but I am hitting large armor areas, so this is why I said, like, you're not really going to be able to pinpoint even if you wanted to. So there you'll see, like, yeah, I'm trying to angle, doesn't really matter. He's able to get me. Now here's where he's falling back. They already reset. I know I can't sit there because of artillery, so this is kind of stuff where, hey, you know, I got that reload, and again, I didn't wait to aim in as much. I knew, hey, I'm gonna have to pull that trigger. I can't really take the hit. And that's the thing to bear in mind. Like, so for example, tier 8 vehicles, you're not going to block them. Like your turret, hull armor, all that stuff, it won't block it. But here's the case, like I see that guy and I'm like, well, I'm not going to run that way, but I'm going to come over this way. And again, using the timing on my reload, I'm also making it a scenario where I can actually go there. So bam, put that shot out. I was trying to aim in his weak spot. And here's what I mean by like heavier tanks. So a heavier tank, I'm able to nail him for 300 something damage. Now, strangely enough, this guy could pen me all day long with his normal rounds, but instead he swapped to high explosive. And that actually made it to where I actually can block that shot. That was the second shot. The first shot, I could not block. So now another guide I want to give you is when you're using high explosive rounds, they're not going to tell you, hey, I can penetrate. So everything that you aim at, everything that you're showing, the indicator is going to be red, by the way. So like that's what, like I know where his weak spot is. I know the cupola a weak spot. I know the viewport's a weak spot. So here I'm just aiming at what he's got, you know, for a weak spot. And then even though it's red, I'm like, yep, put it right into it anyway, right? So like right there, I was actually aiming for the gun drive port, or I'm sorry, not the gunner, but the driver port. So all of these are things that allow me more damage if I can hit it, which it looks like I did. It looks like I'm nailing onto those, so that those are going to give me those 300 to 400 damage shots. Now, sadly though, I'm getting nuked by artillery plus him using high explosives. He's just trying to keep me in place. So that's really the gist of it. You know, just roll in, kind of take that shot, roll back. Don't overexpose. Overexposure is really, really bad because you're not fast enough to get back. So you want to stick to the ridges and things like that. Stick to edges. Stick to like corners of rocks. Don't go all the way out into the open because, well, if you fire, they're gonna know to push you. They're gonna know to take advantage because you have 20-second reload. So that's really the gist of the KV-2. I hope this video was informative, and I hope that this helps you with your own gameplay. And again, if you like this stuff, like, subscribe. I've released plenty of stuff. I've released every week. Usually I think Friday, every morning I will post a new video. Alright, thanks so much, and I will catch you on my next video, I hope.